All right, let's talk about how to put your saxophone together. Now, the first thing you'll do is you'll actually take out your neck strap. You have to play the saxophone with a neck strap, right? You can't, if you don't have a proper neck strap, you're going to be trying to hold the saxophone with your fingers and you're going to use your pinkies to try to lodge them into different keys, and it's just not going to work. You have to have a neck strap to play the saxophone. Mine's red, yours is probably black. There's some that come with little pads on them, some that are just straight this material right here, and that's fine. You know, if you want to get one that's a little comfier, then you can find one with a pad on it, but sometimes people like to have a collared shirt when they play, just a little bit of cushion, because it can be a little uncomfortable to feel the pressure of the saxophone, the weight on your neck, but really over time, you'll just get used to it. Saxophone players kind of get used to that. If you switch to a bigger type of saxophone later, sometimes they have different neck straps that put the weight on your shoulders rather than on your neck, and that's an option later down the road. Okay, so I put the neck strap on. Let's talk about how to adjust my neck strap. First thing, usually they have something that looks kind of like this, kind of like a buckle, and the best way I found is you hold the end of it, put your fingers on either side of that, and you just kind of pull with one hand gently, and you pull up with the other hand. Try to make sure these don't get tangled. Sometimes they can get all tangled up, but you just pull down to loosen it, kind of pull up to tighten it, and keep your other hand on that. If it gets all tangled up, you can try to give it to your parents or me or your band director, have them try to figure out how to work it and get it untangled. But sometimes that happens. You just kind of gotta figure it out. There's different types of neck straps that might be easier or harder to loosen up, and if you want to get one of those, that's great too. So the next thing we would do is we'd go straight for the reed. Now you'll notice I have a reed case. It's two-sided. There's spots for 4 reeds, and this is fantastic. You got to have something like this. You don't have to, but you can use the little plastic cases that your reed comes with, but it's better to have something like this. Little grooves help the reed dry, and this lets it lay flat and dry flat. If your if your reed doesn't dry flat, then it'll be curved and warped, and it won't play as well. It won't function well. So you gotta, this is a really, really awesome thing to have. So the next thing you do is you take your reed, and not the rounded part right here, but the flat part on this side. I'd put that against my tongue, and I just put my reed in my mouth like this, and you just kind of. It just gets loosened up, but with your saliva, right? So you can put it in a cup of water to loosen it up. But what this does is the reed is, stiff wood, and you want to make sure it's more flexible. And so by getting it wet, it allows it to be more flexible, and then it's going to vibrate better, right? Vibration is what creates sound, and that's how instruments and sound work. So if it's a really stiff reed and it doesn't move well, it won't play well. So some people like to put in a little cup of water or something, that's fine, or you just stick it in your mouth, and while you're putting your instrument together, you just keep it in there the whole time, right? I'm going to do a separate video on putting your reed on your mouthpiece, so I'm just going to put this away for now. But normally I'd keep it in my mouth while I'm putting my instrument together. Okay? Next I would grab the body. Okay? And notice I'm grabbing it by the bell. I'm grabbing it by the big spots. I'm not grabbing it by all these keys and these rods. You don't want to hold it by all these things because those can bend, and there's so many. Look at all those things on the saxophone, right? And they're all perfectly aligned to work great. And if you bend one, it might cause others not to work well, or that one won't work, and then you won't be able to play some certain specific notes. Okay? So what I do is I like to hook this on to this little ring right here. And everyone's hook might look a little different. Mine kind of got to pull it like this. This one's a little trickier. Some of them are just a hook that doesn't close, and that works too. And then I'll tighten my neck strap up. So we'll talk about instrument placement later. The next thing I would do is you can put the neck on the mouth or on the body of the saxophone. So let me scoot in so you can see this. On top of the neck, there's this little screw, and I'm going to loosen that. And that makes this part just a little bit wider, and that allows the neck to fit right in. Now, you see this little thing that sticks up on the back? That kind of lines up with this thing right here. And you just kind of twist it in little tiny twists. And you want that little key work to go kind of right in the middle of this thing. If it's way off, that's not good. If it's way the other way, that's not great either. So you want those things to line up. Okay? And then I have the neck on. Once I have it on, I can re-tighten this. And then I'll make adjustments later on whether the neck is kind of turned this way a little or this way, just slightly, so I can have a proper playing position. Okay? Our saxophone is almost put together perfectly. The next thing we need to do is put on the mouthpiece. Now there's a very important thing. You'll notice my mouthpiece has a mouthpiece cap. I'm going to take that off. This just helps protect the mouthpiece and the reed. Your mouthpiece is made out of hard rubber. Kind of seems like plastic, right? So this part, the tip, if you drop it and it lands on that, it might break. And if you get even a little chip in the tip of this, your instrument won't play. Air will leak inside. It's a big problem. So you got to make sure you always hang on to this and don't let it fall or drop. You got to protect it so it doesn't get broken. Okay, this next part's important. Sometimes when you're putting the mouthpiece on the reed, I watch beginners, you're putting the mouthpiece on the neck of the saxophone. You'll notice this cork is where you put the mouthpiece. I'll watch beginners and they'll put this on, and as they're putting it on, they're pulling really hard right here, and that's a big problem because if you pull down, this metal's not that strong, you could cause a really big bend or you could break your saxophone there. I've seen people, they're wrenching it on and they bend the neck of the saxophone so there's a big crease right here, and that's not good. Then you have to take it to get repaired or replaced. You don't want to have to do that. So actually, sometimes I recommend that before you put the neck on the saxophone itself, just hold the neck. You don't really want to hold it by all these pieces right here. You don't want to bend those. Hold it by all the thick metal parts. And just twist the mouthpiece on the neck like that. You'll notice mine went on really easy, and that's because I had cork grease that I had put on it. If you can't get the mouthpiece on the cork as easily, you'll have to find some cork grease. It looks like chapstick, but it's not. Don't use chapstick on your instrument, and don't use cork grease as chapstick. It's not the same, okay? So I would, there's just it works like chapstick, but don't use chapstick. You just put a little bit on there, rub it in with your fingers, wipe your fingers off on your pants, and then and then that greases up the cork, and then you'll be able to put your mouthpiece on just with those little twists, okay? Then I can put the neck on the saxophone, can tighten this little guy up again, and then I'll adjust the mouthpiece so the hole, you can see that hole right there, right, is facing down, and that's where the reed is going to go on your bottom lip, okay? So that's how it works. And now my instrument is pretty much fully together. I have my mouthpiece. I don't have the reed, but we'll talk about that later. I got my ligature. I've got the neck that's attached to the body, that's attached to my neck strap, that's on my neck. And that's how the saxophone goes together.